Does God exist? That's the big question, and I'm your host, Gabriel Bouch. We are in a series of videos outlining 10 intriguing lines of evidence that point to the existence of God. In this third and final video, we're going to unpack the last 4. Number 7, miracles. Earlier, we observed that Jesus' contemporaries viewed him as a worker of miracles. But it's also the case that there are countless reports of more recent miraculous phenomena from all over the world. In his 2-volume work titled Miracles, scholar Craig Keener cites literally thousands of miracle reports. He quotes Edmund Tang, who comments on miracles in China. All Christian churches in China practice some form of healing. In fact, according to some surveys, 90% of new believers cite healing as a reason for their conversion. This is especially true in the countryside where medical facilities are often inadequate or non-existent. Keener cites examples not just from Asia, but from all over the world, including the United States. Some of these claims come from medical professionals who have supporting documentation. Here's one example. Dr. Crandall, a well-trained cardiologist with world-class credentials, explained to me that he initially did not believe in miracles, but occasionally saw unexplained miracles in hospitals. At a critical point, he noted, he had to decide whether they were real. Once he decided that they were real, he had to act consistently with that belief and began to pray for patients in addition to using conventional medicine. One Thursday, a gentleman whom he had known for many years came to his office. He had not seen the man in 6 months, but this patient had a grapefruit-sized flesh-eating ulcer with the wound going down to the bone, eating through the calf muscles. Treatments had failed, and he was scheduled to have his leg amputated the next week. The family had come to Dr. Crandall for a second opinion, and he concurred with the other doctors. The wound was incurable. Nevertheless, he would pray. After unwrapping the leg, he placed his hand inside the wound and prayed for the wound to be healed. He then wrapped the leg up and confessed, "I've done what I can do. The rest is up to God." 4 days later, the man's wife called, noting that the ulcer was melting away and new skin was forming. Should they amputate anyway, she wondered? Because a miracle was clearly taking place, he advised against that. By the following week, the man's leg was completely whole. When Craig Keener probed about the possibility of this wound healing on its own, Dr. Crandall responded, "It can't happen on its own. It's impossible." This sort of miraculous recovery in response to prayer is a powerful line of evidence pointing to the existence of God. Number 8, the phenomenon of exorcism. The island nation of Madagascar has a population of about 21 million people. From 2003 to 2012, 3 million people in Madagascar converted to Christianity. That is 1 out of every 7 people in the nation. Now, one of the significant factors behind this wave of conversions was the phenomenon of exorcism. In his book, I Am Not Afraid, Robert Bennett describes how one Malagasy leader got involved in performing exorcisms. In 2006, I met Dr. Joseph Randri Anasolo, who would quickly become one of my best friends and mentors. Dr. Randri Anasolo grew up in a syncretistic Roman Catholic home in Madagascar. His family attended church, and they also participated in traditional religions of the Malagasy people, animism. At age 12, Randri Anasolo, at the request of his family, entered a Roman Catholic seminary to begin training for the priesthood. When Randri Anasolo reached adulthood, he was ordained. While performing his duties as a priest, he began to notice the work of a Lutheran movement called the Fifo Hazana. While attending one of their gatherings, he observed an exorcism. What happened next came unexpectedly. He lost consciousness and fell to the ground. Those present saw him in convulsions and recognized that he was under attack by demonic forces. The impiandri, laymen who work with the ordained clergy, ran to his side and began to focus their exorcistic words on him. After regaining consciousness, he vowed to leave both the priesthood and the traditional religions of his family to become a Lutheran pastor. This began his 30-plus year career as a Lutheran pastor, seminary professor, and exorcist. These experiences are not limited to the non-Western world. The famous psychiatrist M. Scott Peck describes in detail his own experiences with 2 exorcisms in his book Glimpses of the Devil. Now, should we simply write off these and thousands of other similar experiences? The existence of evil spirits who respond to commands given in the name of Jesus Christ is a powerful line of evidence pointing to the existence of God. Number 9, the resurrection of Jesus Christ. Gary Habermas is one of the world's leading experts on the historical evidence for the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead. He identifies 3 facts that are almost universally agreed upon by those who study the subject. 1. Jesus died by crucifixion. 2. Jesus' disciples believe that he rose from the dead and appeared to them. 3. The church persecutor Paul was suddenly changed. These 3 facts are supported by multiple strands of very early and very reliable historical evidence. For that reason, they are granted by the vast majority of scholars who study the subject. What is the best explanation of these facts? There are not many options. One of the most common explanations is that the disciples and Paul all had hallucinations. Now, there are multiple problems with this suggestion. To begin with, many of the appearances in the New Testament documents are appearances to groups of people. Michael Licona quotes clinical psychologist Dr. Gary Sibsey. I have surveyed the professional literature, peer-reviewed journal articles and books written by psychologists, psychiatrists, and other relevant healthcare professionals during the past 2 decades and have yet to find a single documented case of a group hallucination. That is, an event for which more than one person purportedly shared in a visual or other sensory perception where there was clearly no external referent. Secondly, why would a hallucination or vision cause the disciples to conclude that Jesus had been raised bodily from the dead? As scholar N.T. Wright puts it, the ancient world as well as the modern knew the difference between visions and things that happen in the real world. And would Paul, who was persecuting the church, be prone to have a hallucination like that? This hypothesis also fails to explain other facts, like Jesus' empty tomb or the conversion of Jesus' skeptical brother James. The best explanation is that Jesus was in fact raised from the dead. And if Jesus was raised from the dead, then it's not a stretch to believe that the God he so often talked about really exists. Number 10, near-death experiences. Now, this phenomenon is far more common than many people realize. A near-death experience is when a person is clinically dead for a period of time, and during that time has experiences that they can describe in great detail later on. Sometimes these experiences can be corroborated by other means. One person who has studied this in detail is Dr. Penny Sartori. She asked cardiac patients to describe the procedures that they underwent. 28 of these patients were unable to even guess as to what procedures had been performed. 3 reported scenarios based on things they had seen in popular hospital dramas on TV, and 2 guessed about the scenario. All had errors and misconceptions of the equipment used, and incorrect procedures were described. Many guessed that the defibrillator had been used when, in fact, it had not. This contrasted significantly with the surprisingly accurate accounts made by patients who claimed to be out of their bodies and observing the emergency situation. Here's one such description relayed by cardiologist Michael Sabom. I assured Pete that he could talk freely with me and that I wouldn't think him crazy. I explained that I was researching the topic. He told me he had left his body during his first cardiac arrest and had watched the resuscitation. When I asked him to tell me what exactly he saw, he described the resuscitation with such detail and accuracy that I could have later used the tape to teach physicians. Pete remembered seeing a doctor's first attempt to restore his heartbeat. He struck me, and I mean he really whacked me. He came back with his fist from way behind his head, and he hit me right in the center of my chest. Pete remembered them inserting a needle into his chest in a procedure that he said looked like one of those Aztec Indian rituals where they take the virgin's heart out. He even remembered thinking that when they shocked him, they gave him too much voltage. Man, my body jumped about 2 feet off the table. Near-death experiences often involve encounters with a being that those having the experience describe as God or as Jesus Christ. Sometimes these experiences have a profound impact on those having them. They describe the experiences with great reverence and great awe. Other times they say that what they experienced is more real than what they experience in this life. Now, at a minimum, these experiences suggest that we can continue our existence outside of our physical bodies. And if that's the case, and if these individuals really have had an experience with God, then this is a powerful line of evidence pointing to the existence of God. Those are 10 intriguing lines of evidence pointing to the existence of God. If you found these videos helpful or interesting, will you take a moment to leave a comment or like or subscribe? I look forward to bringing you many more videos in the near future.